Hey, welcome guys. Really appreciate you coming out in the last session of the day. I know what it's like at conference. You're sort of full up, and so we thought we would reward you with chocolate and just show our appreciation for you guys getting here. Just by word of introduction, Chris, my wife, and I, we run a company called ULearn, and so we are the face of MathsWhiz in New Zealand. It's a UK company, but aligned to New Zealand curriculum. Got with me here today Veronica from Wellesley College. We've got Matt from Point England School and Luke from Western Heights, and we're going to just have a short Q&A with them in a little bit. I don't want to talk too much today about the program itself, but more about the pedagogy behind it, about what's happening in the classroom, about how we can make life easier for ourselves in the classroom. So Chris and I are both teachers. I was in the classroom full-time up until the end of 2014, the last 18 or 19 years as head of faculty of mathematics in a senior school, 7 to 13. Hey, welcome. I was interested this morning in Professor Michael Fullan's address, and a couple of things I picked up from that. He talked about legacy pedagogy, and that really resonated with me because so often in schools we're faced with something new, aren't we? Okay, and I love teaching. I love kids, and I made the decision to step out of the classroom after 30 odd years at the end of 2014, and a lot of what drove me out was the constant change, the constant work that I had to do, which I felt really didn't have that much input into what the students are, or what we're there for, and that student learning and achievement. And what Professor Fullan said, it's natural to revert to what we know when we're trying to introduce something new. And that resonated with me, and that's our default. What I'll hopefully show you this afternoon is how this something new doesn't have to be a big step, but it can be a big help. Another thing that he said, pedagogy is the driver and technology is the accelerator. I'm firmly of the belief that you cannot give technology to a student and therefore they will learn. Okay, so the prime factor in student achievement is effective teaching, and that's where I think we work closely, very, very, very closely with schools and with teachers in terms of how best to embed this in your program, because your program may be different to the one down the road. How are you going to get the best out of it for you as a teacher, but also for your students? A number of teachers will say to me, what do you think is best, a tablet or a laptop? And it's like, you're asking the wrong question. We need to go back to the pedagogy. What do you want to use the tool for? Now let's look at the tool. And that's the way we approach MathsWhiz. The final thing that he said is deep learning incorporates parents, families and communities. And that's a huge part of MathsWhiz. It's integrating with the home, it's integrating with the teacher, it's integrating with the student, so getting that triangle there operating. I read a very sad Facebook post a couple of weeks ago about a teacher in a similar position to me, 30 odd years in the classroom, primary teacher from Australia, and she had given up teaching after those 30 years, but some of the things she said really resonated again. And she was talking about increasing stress in the classroom, and that's for teachers as well as students. She was talking about the overemphasis of assessment. I was talking to a year 7 teacher, actually late term 2, and she said, I haven't taught my class this term. She said, I've been with my class this term, but she said, I've been constantly assessing. I haven't had time to teach. And the overemphasis on data and data analysis. And look, I come from a mathematics background, a science maths background. I love data. I love data analysis. What was frustrating for me in the classroom is the amount of time that I had to spend on generating that data. So what about, this is totally made up. Okay, I've just created this as an illustration. So when we look at our tasks, when we look at our jobs as teachers, let's take away all of the administrative stuff. And let's say 20% of an allocated time is spent teaching, say 30% student learning, and we've got 15% on assessment, marking, data generation, 10% data analysis and feedback, feed forward, lots of tasks. What if we took some of those tasks away? What if we took away some of the assessment that you've got to do? And what about if we took some of that marking, that data generation away from what you had to do? And let's have that happening while the students are doing their learning. And that's what MathsWhiz is all about. While the students are doing their learning, the program behind the scenes is constantly evaluating their learning. working out next steps, working out whether they need assistance, but it's also constantly monitoring assessment and progress, constantly generating data, constantly reacting to the student, and all of that information then is available for you to feed into your planning, to feed into your inquiries. So what if we reinvested that time that we saved into our planning? So teaching and planning's gone up, that time that I've got available for my planning. And honestly, in my later years in teaching, I didn't do a lot of planning. I just didn't have time. What about if we reinvested some of that time? Instead of having to constantly assess my students, I could have more time in those rich, deep learning experiences that Professor Fullen was talking about this morning. What if? And that's what I hope to show you a little bit about MathsWiz this afternoon. So MathsWiz is an interactive, adaptive, personal tutor. It is not your maths program, but it's designed to sit alongside your maths program and to enhance you as an effective classroom teacher. It reacts to the students' needs. If the students are having problems, if the students are doing well, there's facilities in there for those students to regress in their learning to get extra help, or to jump forward if they have mastered a particular topic. Once that student time is spent, it's gone. We've got a limited resource in terms of finance, in terms of our budget. We've got a limited resource in terms of student learning time. And both of those currencies, when they're spent, they're gone and we can't get them back again. So when your students are online, how do you know that what they're doing is effective? How do you know that the time that they've invested is going to give you a return on that investment? And that's where the data comes in. There's full accountability for the students in terms of the time that they've spent, and the data will give you guys full accountability in terms of the finance that's been invested as well. So when I was using Wiz in the classroom, the analytical brain said to me, you know what, I can see from the data, the more my students use MathsWiz, the better they get at MathsWiz. That's a no-brainer. Is this having a flow on in terms of our standardised testing? So let's overlay MathsWiz data with some of our standardised testing. And we pulled some data out of Point England School. And we looked at the gloss stages. Now the green bars are not your top students. The green bars are the students in the 7-8 cohort at Point England who are using MathsWiz for 60 minutes or more per week. And they were outperforming the rest of the cohort in their progress through the gloss stages. And we thought, okay, so that's gloss, okay, strategies. What about ASTIL? And we saw a similar feature coming through in ASTIL. Again, the green bars are the effective users of MathsWiz, and they were making accelerated progress through the ASTIL the stages at a faster rate than the rest of their cohort. I like this graph because when we look at algebra, it seems like the high users weren't performing as well as the lower users. Now I always say that data doesn't give us the answers, data gives us the questions. And I like this slide because this demonstrates here what I said before, the most important thing that's going to affect your student learning is effective teaching. Now when I dug down into the data, algebra doesn't come in until much higher curriculum levels, and we've actually only got 6 or 7 students in that sample. That's why these bars here are much bigger. They represent many more students. So we've only got a small number of high achieving students. And what that tells me is that what's happening at 7-8 is some very, very effective teaching of algebra, negating the influence that MathsWiz had. But it was a very, very small sample as well. So, how does MathsWiz work? Well, in essence, what happens is when you upload student data, it gets uploaded with the student's name, obviously, but also their date of birth. From the date of birth, MathsWiz will start an assessment through a range of topics covering the curriculum, depending on the age of the student as to how many topics, and it will start at about where it thinks that student should be relative to their age. If the students get questions wrong, the questions get easier. If the students get questions right, the questions get harder, until MathsWiz finds their level in each particular topic. So this student here has got strengths in pencil and paper addition and measurement, weaknesses in mock div. This is actually an interesting slide because it's not what I generally see. And often with my classes I would find strengths in mock div and weaknesses in add sub, which was a little bit confusing to me. But what I've found with teaching is that students often know the answers before I do. So I pose that question to my class, And their response was, well, sir, it's a no-brainer, because we often do practice on our times tables, we don't do practice on AdSub. So that was interesting for me to get that feedback from the students. Once the students have finished that diagnostic, MathsWiz will then set individualised learning plans for each student based on their strengths and weaknesses, particularly targeting their weaknesses. Okay, they will get a series of exercises which will have an element of teaching at the beginning, and then they'll go into some questions. If they get questions wrong, MathsWiz does not give them the answer straight away. It will give them some help in the form of scaffolding to further enhance the learning experience, so there will be teaching even within the exercises.
Watch.
Once the students have finished an exercise, they then get to do a test, and we teach our students the difference between an exercise and a test in terms of the test is very, very plain, very, very boring, and it's like this because we want you to recognise when it is a test. And this is where the students make progress. When they pass the test, they make what we call a progression, which means that they've achieved a learning objective. Once they've made a progression, a little bit of blue gets filled in on their progress report. So the blue bars indicate progress that the students have made. So initially we had strengths and weaknesses, and after a while you can see the blue bars here are fairly consistent. MathsWiz is in the background, filling in the gaps for you, filling in the gaps for you as a classroom teacher. So I was talking to a teacher earlier today, and he said, look, there's a lot of pressure on me in the classroom to cover my numeracy, my number knowledge, my number strategy. I just find geometry and measurement, sometimes they just slip off. But he said, I've got great confidence in MathsWiz because I know that even if I don't get onto that, my students are still getting that in the background. MathsWiz is picking up the gaps. We've had a lot of feedback from teachers over recent years. Can I set the work for my students? And the answer is yes and no. And so up until 2 weeks ago, you had no control over what the students got in their tutor. And 2 weeks ago, as a result of a lot of input from New Zealand teachers, MathsWiz has now introduced a facility where you can direct their learning for a period of time. So you've got a geometry topic coming up next week. You can set the next 3 lessons in their tutor mode where they're learning new material just to geometry. The advantage with that, and this is consistent throughout the whole MathsWiz experience, is the students are always working at their level. If they're low in geometry, they'll be getting easy exercises in geometry. If they're good, they'll be getting harder exercises. There's no facility for the students to choose easier work, or for me as a teacher to give them work that's a little bit too hard. I'll just finish off on curriculum reporting before I'll turn it over to a bit of a Q&A. Curriculum reporting is something that was introduced just recently, where this product is out of the UK, but I was encouraged with it because it does address a lot of the numeracy strategies that we've got here in New Zealand through the Numeracy Project. We aligned this to NZC, so now you've got full reporting against NZC curriculum AOs. So when you go into your curriculum report, you'll get a dashboard that looks a little bit like this. So across here we've obviously got our AOs. If you're not familiar with what each one is, if you mouse over those, the achievement objective will pop up. If you click on those, you'll get a drop down of all of the MathsWiz exercises that directly relate to that achievement objective. So what does this tell me as a teacher? This tells me that my class has fairly good proficiency here on number algebra 2.6 and 2.7. But if I was wanting to do a starter activity with my class, I might focus on number algebra 2.1 because we've still got to get full mastery there. Now let's say I'm not that flash on fractions, it's something that I really don't like teaching. We can pick the achievement objective that relates to fractions, click on the drop down. I've got a whole lot of interactive teaching snippets there that the students would normally get in their teaching mode, in their tutor mode, but I've actually got those available to me on my projector, on my interactive board to use that in class. The advantage here is if I picked some of these where I don't have full mastery, I know I'm targeting the needs of my class because I can see straight away from here that's an area of weakness for my class. I know that I'm wasting my time if I'm going to give them some starter activities focusing here. So reading this chart vertically, I'm getting some really, really good class trends that I can feed straight into my planning. Looking at this horizontally, what we've got down here is we've got student names. So as I'm going across horizontally, we've got achievement for students measured against each curriculum achievement objective. Not just topic, but discrete achievement objectives. So we've got some rich data there feeding directly into our OTJs. So, as I said before, when you click on that drop down, when you click on the achievement objective, this is what it looks like. You click on any one of those little view buttons and it will go straight into the exercise that the students would get, the interactive teaching in the beginning, followed by the 10 exercises following. So, welcome guys, and thanks for coming along and joining us. So, Veronica, there's always something new in the classroom. As teachers, we're always faced with something new. So, tell us how is that? Actually, do you guys feel comfortable standing? You want to come over here so that people can see us a little bit better? So, just in terms of integrating WIS into your classroom programs, into Wellesley, can you just talk to us a little bit about that? Some problems, some successes.
Certainly. So, just a bit of background, Wellesley College is actually year 0 to year 8 school, not a secondary school, and so I have a year 5 class. And I think WIS has just been a great success because I know that, one of the main reasons is that while I'm, as Ross was saying, perhaps focusing on geometry or measurement, all the other areas of the maths curriculum are being targeted and those needs are being met and consolidated for the students, chugging away in the background there, and not just having those areas exposed to the students, but specifically meeting their individual needs. So every student is on a program that's just right for them, targeting their weaknesses and areas that they're finding challenging, things they need to work on. So it's certainly been a real bonus for us in that regard.
Cool. Matt, you guys are one-to-one?
Yes.
Yeah, so how do you find WIS in terms of maximising that time, knowing what your students are doing online, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, with one-to-one, there's a lot less wait time. As soon as I say go, I can see a group and the others can go straight onto their work because it's all on their device. So what's great about Maths WIS is they can open it, press their bookmark, and they're straight into their individualised program. So that's really handy for one-to-one.
Cool. Luke, so do you see the effects of WIS in other areas of their learning?
Not so much in other areas outside of mathematics. It's more of when I am teaching a group of kids and I've got a learning intention we're working on, quite often they'll come down and say, oh, that's just like on Maths WIS. I'll be like, great, so you know this already, can you teach the lesson then? And I'll sit back and be able to watch them and we can extend them and work on other areas. So in that way it helps heaps.
Yeah, cool. I was working with a student a few years ago and he was having problems with fractions, in particular equivalency with fractions, and I drilled down into his learning, and we were able to drill down into the exact exercise he was having problems with. And the first thing I said to him is, can you read me the question? And he said, find the what's that equi word? I said, equivalent. He said, what does that mean? And when I explained the concept of equivalency, his next response was, that's easy, I know that. And then he went through and he aced the exercise. And that was really enlightening for me because I could have given him all of the worksheets in the world on equivalent fractions, and actually equivalency in fractions wasn't his issue, it was a literacy issue. And so that helped me identify that straight away. Okay, so Veronica, what about WIS when we've just introduced topic focus, when you want to focus them on a particular topic?
Absolutely fantastic. So it does mean as a teacher we can target and set specific activities that we're working on. It gives the students a bit of a heads up and a wee introduction, and then it creates some good dialogue around that, and also identifies if they are having some particular struggles, because they're specifically working on those activities that have been set for them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
What keeps them motivated? So you're busy with the group. What keeps them motivated on Maths WIS? What do they like about it?
So in my class we actually look at the results most days, and so we put a lot of emphasis on improvement over usage or maths age. So what's quite cool about that is a learner who might be in a lower group, they can still succeed and actually improve sometimes faster than the high achievers, and so they can win we might have a class competition and they can actually be the most successful. Yeah.
There's so many facets to the program, so depending on the student as to what engages them, there's a, they can earn credits and go and spend them in a shop, which is lots of fun. But then there's challenges, so they can challenge their buddies or other people over a similar level. So there's different aspects that will grab, different things for different students and keep them going. And just sort of adding on to that, like we've created a wee trophy, so every week whoever's at the top of the leaderboard in the school gets the trophy for the week. There's certificates which you can just print out in a second, which they love getting as well. So there's lots of rewards and incentives.
Actually, there was a slight problem with the leaderboard, which has recently been solved. The leaderboard resets every Monday, and because it's a UK program, it used to reset at midnight Sunday UK time, which is about lunchtime here. And one school reported to us that they had a number of absences on Monday morning because the students were staying at home doing their maths was to see if they could get up the leaderboard before the clock reset. So that school introduced a rule that I think they had to be there for the morning admin session, but fortunately now it's aligned with New Zealand time, so it sets at midnight New Zealand time, so it's not a problem. But yeah, certainly engaging with the students. So Luke, what about your inquiries? So how does Wiz feed into your inquiries? How do you use it that way?
Well, maths was, like you were saying before, the language is quite a huge branch of mathematics that we kind of take for granted as adults. We know the language and concepts. That is something that's feeding in at the start of the lesson. It's been really good coming out from Wiz, so children wanting to know what these words mean, what these concepts mean. I teach the Accelerate class, and our brief is to wherever you are on the learning continuum is just to go for it. So that maths has been really great to extend that, because I've got guns in maths, and I've got some kids who more got strengths in literacy and other areas. But for everyone at every level, it extends them where they are, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So Matt, with your one-to-one, how do you work it in your classroom? Do you have a certain time each day that the kids are on Maths Wiz, or is it open, they choose, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, no, so it's flexible. They have to do a minimum of 75 minutes a week, which is 15 minutes a day, and I have to sometimes put a maximum on that as well. But as you said, it's not our maths program, it supports our maths program. So I create follow-up activities as well, and it's up to them when they do their Maths Wiz. So they might do one exercise and then have a break and come back to it.
We don't have one-to-one devices. That'd be really nice, but we've got about 10 laptops in class, and I just use it as part of my maths rotation with my 3 groups. One's working with me, one's working on practice, and the other one is working on Maths Wiz. And I know that they're getting good stuff there, because I can check and see at the click of a button what they've been up to. Yeah.
There's 2 facets in terms of the student learning experience. There's what's called the tutor mode, where students go in and they learn new material, they learn new skills. And then there is another area called console or consolidation, where they practice. Now they can practice as much as they like, it's unlimited, but we did have some issues with students spending too much time on Wiz, particularly too much time in tutor. What happens is, if your students are learning new skills all the time but they're not consolidating, they struggle in the assessments. And that will show through in your Wiz data. So if you do have a problem like that, you actually can cap their usage in tutor mode to actually limit those students who just want to go for it all the time and actually advance too quickly. Okay, so the data that's produced, Veronica, is that reflected in other data? I know we've seen some evidence from Point England. How have you felt other school-wide data?
It's definitely that, as we see an improvement in their maths age on Maths Wiz, it definitely seems to align with an improvement in other areas that we've been testing or have assessments on. And I love the fact that it's just so easy to obtain the data, a few clicks of a button. It's only sort of 5 minutes of your time once a day. You can just check in and instantly see, how the students are progressing, who might be having some difficulties, what's going on. It's something that's not, when we're so busy, we're not having to spend hours using it.
Down the front.
So do you find that the kids are going home and doing it at home as well, and spending talking about capping time on it? Are they going home and spending lots of time on it?
They do. Some kids more than others. I had one child who, after 2 days of, it resets back to 0 on the Monday, and after a couple of days she was up to 220 minutes usage. In the beginning, when I started, we set the time capped at a certain level, but now it's just open, and if the kids want to accelerate and go for it, and they do, they can. But if they're not using it at home, then that's fine as well, because they definitely get it in class.
Yeah, we have it uncapped as well. You find often the top end learners sort of get into a bit of a competition, and they chase each other all the time.
Down the back.
What sort of feedback are the students getting as they're working through the program? Because if it's independent learning that sits alongside your teaching, what sort of feedback are they getting?
As I said, I actually sit my class down on the mat and show them the data, and so I can see their improvement. I can see their usage and like their time spent on MathsWiz. So we actually hold them accountable if they've been a bit sly, saying just have MathsWiz open and just chatted. We can actually see how many exercises they've done. How come it took you 20 minutes to do 2 exercises or 1 exercise? So we show them this view most days.
The other thing is, sorry to interrupt, but we are giving feedback to Wiz constantly. And the one thing that they're working on at the moment, like they've just released something 2 weeks ago, one of the main things is actually that the students are going to get more input and more of a view of what they're doing, exactly what they're doing. So, I think probably at least every year we're seeing massive updates, and that's one of the current focuses of development, that the kids are going to get more feedback on their actual learning. Yeah.
So we celebrate it as a class, and you can see how many weeks their maths age has improved on MathsWiz, and then I compare that to, in a week you've got 1 week older, but you've got 2 weeks smarter. Most of my learners are below their maths age, so I'm saying you're catching it up. So if they've made a month's progress in a week, we celebrate it.
And they love getting their topic reports printed out. That's the one where it had the blue lines that showed the progress that they've made, and they love seeing those and seeing, my blue line's moved a little bit further on my multi div or whatever, and gets really exciting. So it's good to be able to celebrate those achievements regularly and award the certificates and things like that.
That's right, you can put it on your smartboard, and those blue bars that you saw, they actually they race across the screen, so it starts where they were, and then these blue bars fire across, and the kids get really excited about that sort of thing.
Yep. Good. Sorry. Down the back. Yep.
When you say reset, does that mean the activities just disappear, or what happens? If
That's just the amount of time that they've built up their usage over the course of the week.
Oh, okay.
That will go back to 0.
Oh, really?
So you can monitor like how much have they, because you can, different options, you can see how much they've used it in the last month, their full history, the last 7 days, or from Tuesday, yesterday. That's, you can check that time. But where they are, their progress in terms of the activity they're at, it goes straight back to where they left off. Or if they pass that, it takes them to the next area that they need to work on.
So I use that trick if I've been away and they've been with a reliever, and I can just bring up that day and be like, so, junior. Get much maths was done.
Does it align to our, we do stage 2 real age or whatever it is, does it align to that? Is it a direct?
When I did the alignment, I had the choice of, am I going to go National Standards, Numeracy Project, or NZC? And so I thought NZC, it has absolutely got to be our go-to. The rest may change in time. I don't see NZCAOs changing anytime soon. So I think it would get quite complex and quite confusing if we had multiple alignments, so it is just NZC. So with the resetting, all of the student achievement is cumulative. With the school leaderboard, it's based on how many credits the students have got in that week. So every time they do an exercise, they get credits. Every time they do a test, they get credits. And simply, it's just a reporting filter, how many credits they've got for that week. But those credits are cumulative, so you could have a student sitting on 100, 200, 1,000, 1,500 credits, which they can then go away and spend on different things for their interactive study and that sort of thing. So yeah, the resetting is just a resetting of the of the leaderboard.
Sorry, Ross, can I just
Yeah.
address that point there? When I was first asked about whether I wanted to jump on board with Wiz or not, that was one of my major sort of hang-ups, was I was thinking stages, you know. How is this going to match up, and is this just going to cause me more dramas? But in actual fact is, that wasn't an issue at all. It was a non-issue. The kids are, you know, it's enriched their maths so much more, and they've got access to a whole lot more, and the alignment, if you like, is done through the curriculum, but it hasn't. It was a small.
Yeah, I'm just sort of thinking on terms of what we do at our school at the moment in terms of reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used the curriculum alignment where that was in terms of their stage, that, you know,
That's what we
that
just
matrix. Yeah.
talked about. Yeah.
Yep, go for it.
So when Johnny's working on his maths whiz, he can be working from any of the streams at that one time. So if I'm doing geometry, because I teach in junior at college in the junior years, if we're doing geometry and Johnny's got gaps in his number, is there some of those questions thrown in amongst the geometry, or is he
Yep.
getting a bit of algebra and a bit of measurement all in those
Go for it.
10 questions, or?
So you can have your topic focus where you've specifically set some geometry questions for him, but alongside of that is his Choose Your Program running, which just continues to consolidate all those areas that he's, you know, a bit weak and is finding challenging. So if it's number, he's just going to be getting lots of number and helping him, and not just any number, but specific. So whether it's multi div or add sub or whatever it is, fractions, he's, you know, getting those areas and building them up.
So one of the advantages of Wiz is you don't set the work. Maths Wiz is constantly evaluating the student and setting work appropriate to the student at their level in that particular topic. However, now you do have a degree of control with topic focus, or you could be getting the students to go into the consolidation area and say, hey guys, we're starting geometry next week. I want you to practice geometry this week, and they can go in to their consolidation area and just do geometry exercises. But again, all of the exercises will be at their particular level.
You could never the hours and hours it would take to put together a personalised program like that for every student in your class. You'd just not be able to teach anything else. It does it all for you. It's amazing.
For me, that's been one of the major, you know, selling points of Wiz, is that I used to spend a lot of time making maths games and laminating them and putting the resources in the bag, and the kids would play them for about 5 minutes and just get bored. But with Wiz, it's just constantly giving them good stuff. So yeah, it's made my job a lot easier.
And because it's like fully individualised to them, I always feel for the kid that's sort of the lowest in the group, and they're only just getting it before you move on. So they're getting to succeed every day rather than scraping through. So I really appreciate
And
it.
sometimes it can be those kids who find maths really challenging who can be the ones at the top of the leaderboard because they've really been working hard all week on their maths whiz and have accumulated lots of credits, and you know, whoops, there's their name at the top. They've earned the most credits during the week, and it's great.
And is that leaderboard just your class?
It's school-wide leaderboard.
You can
We
break it
can,
down.
yeah.
Yep.
So we just look at the school for our wee trophy that we have in the school, but yeah.
When you go into your class, you'll get a leaderboard just for your class. And probably one of the highlights for me of using Wiz a few years ago, my weakest student in the class was in the top position for improvement. And so Maths Wiz will automatically generate for you at a click of a button a certificate, a pre-populated certificate. And what I would do once a week is I'd have an awards ceremony and I'd laminate a coloured copy of the gold medal certificate. And when I gave this boy his gold medal certificate for most improved, there was two things that happened that just lit me up. First of all, his eyes just about popped out of his head because he was getting a certificate for mathematics and he didn't think he was very good at maths. All right? And for me as a classroom teacher, I don't care how good you are, all I want you to do is progress your learning. And the second thing that happened was the eyes of every other kid in the class just about popped out of their head when they saw him get a gold medal certificate for mathematics because they didn't think he was very good at maths. So this is an example of the data that you'll get on your teacher dashboard. Each of these columns, you click on the columns, you can sort on any of those columns. Any data that you see, you can download into a spreadsheet and have that available to then feed into any of your other analysis. Maths will always help you try and identify your problem. So anything that's coloured in red, it's coloured in red to draw your attention to it. So this student here has got low test marks. They've got good exercise marks, but this is alerting you to the fact that for some reason their test marks are low. So from this interface you can drill right down into that student's learning experience and identify exactly where their pressure points are and help them out with that. Green tick, this means that they're accelerating their learning, they're making progress. So once again, your focus should be on your at-risk students who really should be different this week to what they are next week. And so that's another part of WIS that I like in terms of feeding into my inquiries, my at-risk students. This would give me real-time feedback as to who those students were.
If you find that a student has got a little red mark there or hasn't made the progress you expected them to, you can click on it and it will go take you right back to the activity that they were working on that they failed at. And it could be just something, an understanding issue of the way the question's put or something like that. And the fact that you can click on it with a button and then talk to them, and usually they're away laughing.
Yeah, cool. So how else have you guys found in terms of your teaching experience? Has it changed the way you do things in the classroom?
Yeah, with going back to the tests, because the test is where you obviously get your improvement. We put a lot of emphasis on the importance of tests. So if you're on a test, you can tell your friends you're on a test and they can't talk to you. And even if I've asked you to pack up, unless it's urgent, you're allowed to say, oh, Mr. Goodwin, I'm on a test. You can be excluded from pack up until you finish your test. So that's quite cool.
Cool.
It's just made things a lot easier, really. Saved me time. The kids get a variety of different mathematics that I don't necessarily have time for, we haven't planned for in Syndicate. And I think it's enriched their mathematics too, and it's just keeping them on the boil in maths.
And I think being able to use the exercises for whole class teaching as well, so you can pull up one specifically to look at a concept that you want to work on, and you've got the whole class there, you've got it on your active board, and you can pull kids up and we work through it together as a class. It's just added another tool to the your teaching toolbox. It's great.
Cool. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
I just want to know, how long roughly are the activities and the quizzes? Or, yeah.
Depends how long it takes the learners to do them.
Some of them are activities 1 to 5 questions, some are 1 to 10. If the child is doing really well, maybe they say get 4 in a row correct, WIS will often give them the opportunity to skip ahead. So they can just skip all of those questions and go on to the next exercise. It doesn't take them that long. They're not sitting there. The thing that takes the longest can be the test in the beginning, especially if you've got kids who are really, really good at mathematics, because the program will just push them further until they've reached the point where, this is where they're at. And quite often for some kids who haven't been extended like that before, it takes them into intermediate and then into early high school mathematics. So those kids will take a lot longer to do their initial test, but the activities and the tests themselves, once they're getting started, they don't take that long.
My experience, sort of 3 to 5 minutes for an exercise, maybe 3 or 4 minutes for a test. But again, some of them are actually some of the geometry ones where you're manipulating geometrical equipment, that sort of thing. It can take a little bit longer. But it's really interesting flicking into the student record. They've got a low mark in a test, and you go, hang on, how come you spent 7.5 minutes on the exercise, but you only spent 27 seconds on the test? Oh.
I allow mine, especially if it's a new strategy they're learning on Maths WIS, but they've learned it a different way. With me, I allow them to have their book and try and work it out the way they know, to then help them work out the new strategy on Maths WIS. So sometimes it could take them quite a while, at least for the first couple of questions, until they master the new strategy.
Yeah.
Just about cost, is it per child or a school price? How does all that work?
Cool, yep, per child. Depending on what a school signs up for, between $26 and $35 per student per annum. Okay, last year our average price across the country, schools were paying about $29 per student. That's per year? That's per year, yep. But yeah, depending on if you sign up full school, multiple year contracts, there's lots of sort of discounts built in, so it can come down to around 26. Yeah.
Like a 30-day free trial?
What we do encourage schools to do is, and this is for schools who are really keen to come on board, we actually say, well, actually, you know what we should do? We should just take 2 classes and do a pilot. And so what we do is we run a 10-week pilot, $6 a head, 50 students. I mean, you can bring as many students on as you like. But let's run that pilot. Let's do some intensive work with the teachers. Let's make them the WIS ambassadors in the school. Let's make sure that the assessments are done properly, so therefore you've got robust baseline data. Let's run it for 10 weeks so the students have got enough time to use the program, and then you've got some decent data at the back end. And then you've got some data on which you can then base your decision, so it's an informed decision about your investment. So what we've found is that a lot of schools will run the 10-week pilot. They've seen the data, they've got confidence in the data, they've then got confidence to sign up for the multiple year contract, get the cheaper price.
And do you come in as a consultant with that 10-week pilot?
Yeah, we certainly do. Yep. So we keep in close contact with teachers. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask you lots of questions. You know, what does technology look like in your school? You know, how many computers are you 1-to-1? Are you 1-to-5? Are you 1 to? I think I've seen a computer somewhere around the school. Well, MathsWiz is not for you. It's a technology-based program. And then, okay, so how do you structure your lessons? And then working with the individual teachers on how best to embed it into your programs, from feedback from our experience in the classroom, but also from what other teachers have been telling us.
Sorry, I was going to say, following on, you know, you come to something like ULearn and your head's kind of bombarded with all these amazing new programs and ideas, and you want something that you can just pick up and run with, and you know, we're all time poor. And when I first started with WIS, it literally was, I didn't have to spend, you know, a huge amount of time getting going. I just sort of jumped in. It was really quick and easy to get going. And then because Chris and Ross, they're just a Skype, a phone call, an email away, and they're so quick to respond. Anytime I got stuck or wasn't sure, you know, they was help, and you know, there was help on the way, and then off we'd go again. Then I might sort of think, oh, hang on, what's happening here? And you know, it was great. And so I think we're almost into 5 years now, you know, and they're still there helping if I need it. It's great. But I think it was just the ease of implementation which really sold it to me, because I haven't got time to spend hours trying to, you know, learn a whole new program. Just want to get going.
Cool. Anything else?
Is the
Yeah.
age level 11, did it say, or is it higher than that?
It covers level 1 to 4 of the curriculum and about 60% of level 5. So there's some good level 5 algebra in there, but there's no level 5 trig. So that will give you an idea of the level. So as soon as the students have tactile functionality with a mouse pad or a mouse, my son was on it from 4 years of age. So year 1 to year 9, we say, but you know, there's going to be some high achieving year 8s who max it out. We've got it in learning support centres in a few high schools, and through year 9, 10. So that gives you an idea about what it covers.